Vanakkam. Hello friends. In the previous episode, we saw about the religious ideology of the Kalabras and of how it was interlinked with their administrative framework, of how they created mangalams, basically administrative units, with a Kamakotam as a focal point. The Kotam housed a Buddhist Devi who later came to be known by the names Pidari Amman and Jeshta Devi, and her protector was the Kaval Sasta or Satan. Dr. Padmavati, in her 2023 book, Pudiya Nokil Kalabrar Varalaru, that is a look into the Kalabra rule from a fresh perspective, claimed that the identity of this Satan, who was later called Ayanar, was linked to the Vedic god Indra. The Kalabras were followers of the heretic faith, and under their rule, Buddhism and Jainism flourished and sunk deep roots in Tamilagam. Now, these heretic faiths were the first institutionalized religions on Indian soil, meaning that they had a systematic methodology to proselytize their faith. The Buddhist Sangha, as given by the Buddha himself, Sangam Charanam Kachami, followed faithfully by rulers like Emperor Ashoka, that helped spread Buddhism far and wide beyond Indian borders, where the religion thrives more than it does in its place of birth, India. The Jainas also had their Sangha to spread their philosophy. These were well structured and wealthy organizations funded by the trading community, the Vanihachatu. The Kalabras were tolerant towards other religions, and we have seen several inscriptional evidences that support this. They were not against any Vedic religions per se, but only against certain practices that were adopted and popularized by the erstwhile rulers of Tamilagam, the Moovendar, a case in example being the Brahmadeyams. We saw in detail about how the Velvikudi copper plates issued by Jadila Parantakan captured the cancellation of a Brahmadeyam, a land grant to Brahmin priesthood done by the Kalabras, which was subsequently reinstated by the Pandya ruler. Another very important copper plate inscription issued by the medieval Pandyas are the Dalavaipuram copper plates issued by Parantaka Veera Narayanan, who ruled between 866 and 911 Common Era. Dalavaipuram is located near Koilpatti in Tirunelveli district, and Dr. Padmavati, through inscriptional evidence, shows how the regions of Tirunelveli, Sangarangoil and Rajapalayam were a stronghold of the Kalabras. The Dalavaipuram plates are very valuable records of the Second Pandya Empire's land administration and reforms, land measure, agricultural and economic practices. The plates record historic events such as Parantaka Varaguna's defeat of the Pallavas at Karuvur. Well, of course, there is a Sanskrit part which gives prasastis of ridiculous mythical lineages for the Pandya rulers. But what is of interest to us is that the plates reveal a similar dispute over a land grant where a Brahmadeyam was appropriated and returned to the public by a chieftain. In his 43rd renal year, a Brahmin appeared in the court of Parantaka Veera Narayanan and argued that Kadungon Pandyan, who had ruled 3 centuries ago, had created a Brahmadeyam in favor of 12 Brahmin priests and entrusted to protect the land against any possible Kalabra incursions. Then there was another king by name Kaluduril Sittiseida Pandyan, who had created a land grant in favor of one Kadaha Somajiyar, renaming the place as Somasi Kurichi. Now Kadaham meant a Padai Veedu, a military site, and this land grant was obviously made with the intention of winning the military support of a local chieftain. 3 centuries later, a petty ruler named Kadattirukkai Kiran cancelled these grants, repossessed the lands, united them into a territory, renaming it as Maduradhanallur, and gave it back to the public. Now, Dr. Padmavati poses 3 questions. Given that it was a good 300 years after the fall of the Kalabra rule, who was this Kadattirukkai Kizhavan? Why did he declare it as public land, that is Kudimakkal Nilam? And why did he name it Madurada Nallur? She goes on to show several early Pandya inscriptions that enlisted the names of chieftains who supported them. It was obvious that these chieftains supported whoever was in power at that time to protect their own interests. Thereby, several chieftains who had earlier supported the Kalabras obviously shifted their allegiance to the Pandya rulers. Kadatirukkai Kizhavan was one exemptional chieftain who was still under the influence of the Kalabara rule that condemned the Brahmadeyam as an unfair practice, rightfully so. So he cancelled two grants, consolidated the land, and named it Madurada Nallur. Maduram, meaning sweet or nectar, was a name associated with the Karnataka rulers. Again, Dr. Padmavati shows evidence from the Meykirti of Rajendra Chola I that points out to his conquering regions of Karnataka that were known as Madura Mandala. Parantaka Nedunjadayan himself had the title Madura Karunadagan endowed on him. So the naming of the repossessed territory as Madurada Nallur was the chieftain's own way of commemorating the early Kalabara rule. The seat of Parantaka Veeranarayanan at the time when this claim was made by the Brahmins was at a place known as Kalakudi, where the name association with the Kalabras is unmistakable. The practice of Brahmadeyam, wherein fertile lands were made over as land grant to Brahmin priests, along with the tillers who toiled the soil, they were deemed as free labor, a euphemism for slavery, was nothing short of atrocity. And it must have seemed so in the eyes of the people for them to have supported the Kalabras, the alien force that put an end to the practice. The Kalabras themselves were not tyrannical rulers as was believed to be earlier. They ruled with the support of powerful kirars, landlords who were chieftains. That is how their rule survived for over 300 years, and their socio-religious ideologies continue to influence chieftains like Kadatirukkai Kizhavan. And what happened after the Kalabras were overthrown? The medieval Pandyas went about zealously reclaiming and reinstating Brahmadeyams, as well as created new ones. Parantaka Nedunjadayan, who reinstated the Velvikudi Brahmadeyam, in his Sivaramangalam copper plates shows how he created a Brahmadeyam in favor of one Sujata Bhattar, a Pandit who excelled in Yagna Viddai. Sivaramangalam என்ற ஊரை காராண்மை மீயாட்சி உள்ளடங்க சர்வ பரிவாரங்களுடன் goes the line, clearly establishing that the land was handed over together with the tillers and the cattle. The Sanskrit portion of the Thalavayipuram plates, made up by the Vedic priesthood to alleviate the status of the birth of the Pandyas, show them as originating from the lotus in the navel of Lord Vishnu and as associated with Brahma, Atri and other figures. It gives the story of Ela and her son Pururuvas, who are characters associated with the Rig Veda. Now, the Vishnu Purana shows that both the Pandavas and the Kauravas in the Mahabharata descended from the lineage of Pururavas. Now, the Pandyas too were made into their descendants. Blinded by their ambition for power, and more importantly, what they thought was divine prestige, the Pandyas did a great disservice to their ancient lineage by falling for such Brahmin tactics. Again, in his Chinnamanur copper plates, Parantakan records of how he gave Dulabaram, that is his weight, in gold coins to the Brahmin priests, besides performing such rituals as the Hiranyagarbham and the Kosahasram, practices advocated by the Vedic priesthood for their own benefit, which simply went against ancient Tamil beliefs and traditions. Hiranyagarbham was the ridiculous practice of creating a life-size cow in solid gold. The king was made to enter the mouth of this cow and wriggle out of its back, and coming as he did out of the orifice of the holy cow, he was considered reborn into a higher caste status, a Kshatriya fit to be a king. Imagine how big they must have made the cow for the king to be able to wiggle through it. And of course, this golden cow was gifted to the Vedic priests after the ritual. Do you know a very famous Raja in the north who adopted a similar practice, Hiranyagarbham, besides engaging in a dozen costly rituals that left his treasury depleted, all for changing his lowly caste status into a Kshatriya status. It was the poor but valiant Chhatrapati Shivaji. The powerful Rashtrakutas of medieval Deccan also underwent these rituals. Such was the hold of the Brahmin priesthood and caste division in medieval India. Sahasram, meaning thousand in Sanskrit, Kosahasram referred to the practice of the king gifting 1,000 cows to a Brahmin priest. Now we have seen how in ancient Tamilagam, cattle was a major source of wealth, so much so that all rulers and chieftains engaged in cattle raids, and it was such a big parcel of Tamil living that Tolgapiyar codified them in his work of grammar, giving us Vetchittinai, etc., that codify the different stages of a cattle raid. History shows that cattle raids were part of all ancient civilizations. In his book, The Fall of Civilizations, Paul Cooper details the cattle raids in ancient Sumeria. Cattle raids are still part of certain old tribes such as the Murli tribe of South Sudan, which continue to live in a time warp and for whom cattle is still currency, true wealth and status symbol. So now we need to question why the holy association of the cattle is found only on Indian soil, that too initiated by the Vedic Aryans, whom, as the Vedas show, were butchering and eating them in days of yore. A clever tactic to gain access to a reliable source of wealth. Imagine a king gifting 1,000 cows, a form of cattle raid, only that it was won without any struggle. Same question goes for casteism. Used as a political tool from ancient times, rigidly enforced by the Vedic Aryans in Indian soil but not elsewhere where they migrated. Why? A question that we will dive into at a later place and time. And so it goes with many more Brahmadeyams being recorded in inscriptions such as the Chinnamanur copper plates issued by Rajasimha Pandian, the son of Parantaka Veeranarayanan, who issued the Dalavaipuram plates, creating a village called Mandira Gaurava Mangalam and gifting it as Brahmadeyam to Brahmin priests. Now all this shows how the Brahmin priesthood rose to an influential and wealthy position in the courts of the medieval Pandyas. Tamil Navalar Saridai, a 17th century compilation of an odd bunch of 269 poems by about 51 authors, records 4 poems that were sung in praise of a Kalabra ruler by name Achyuta Kalappalan. Now, some of the poets in this compilation include Lord Shiva as Irayanar, Lord Muruga as Murugavel, some poets from the Sangam era like Avvayar, Perunjathanar and Nakkirar, and some later poets such as Kambar and Ottakuthar. Now, there are quite a few compilations like this, another case in example being the Thiruvalluva Malai, which are full of unreliable information. Here, however, there are 4 songs in praise of a Kalabra ruler, and the compiler gives a story of how this Achyuta Kalappalar imprisoned the Moovendar and demanded that they each sing a poem in his praise in order to win their freedom. So, out of the 4 poems, 2 are supposed to have been rendered by a Pandya king and 1 each by a Chola and a Chera king. Why did the Pandya king have to render 2 poems? In the first poem, the Pandya king sings, "Where can there be men without distress? Rama of the sharp spear waited for 6 months, hiding in the hills belonging to the brother of Vali. I too am waiting before Achyutan with his strong army." Now here the compiler adds that the Kalappala ruler was enraged as the Pandya king compared him to the monkey king while comparing himself to King Rama, and it seems he doubled the fetters on the feet of the Pandya king. So much so, the Pandya king rendered a second poem in all humility that went, "Kidavar Vada Kadal endrarthar, Vada Kadal Tenkadal endrarthar, Tentillai Achyuta, Nindan Mun Kadai Nindrarku Arasu." O Achyuta of southern Tillai, your war drums roar the loudest, and their roar sounds like the Western Ocean to the people of Kudagu, and they sound like the Northern Ocean to the people living left of them. Now, on hearing this, it seems Achyuta Kalappalan took pity and freed the Pandya king. Now, as much as this might be a story, this Tentillai where Achyuta Kalappalan sat is the holy place of Chidambaram, and we have seen how in the Periya Puranam there was a Kalabara ruler who was also a Saivite Nayanmar, Kootruva Nayanar, who wanted the high priests of Thillai to conduct his coronation ceremony. We saw how the high priests refused him the honor, claiming that it was reserved only for Chola monarchs who were staunch Saivites. Now the question remains, why was a Kalabara ruler mentioned at all in this compilation that was done 1100 years after their rule? Two factors are to be taken into account. Though they lost power in major centers like Madurai, rulers of the Kalabara lineage continued their rule from smaller provinces, posing a threat to the medieval Pandyas, Pallavas and Cholas as seen from inscriptional evidence. Another factor could have been that their religious ideologies, which saw the continuation of the heretic faiths in parts of Tamilagam very strongly for very many centuries later, the Kalabaras must have left a lasting impression on the minds of the Tamil people for them to recollect an Achyuta Kalappalan 11 centuries later. Now, the very name Achyuta Kalappalan poses some interesting questions. We know that the Prakrit version of the name Kalaba gets Sanskritized into Kalabra, while in Tamil it is Kalappalan, giving rise to the usage of the term Kalabagulam for the Kalaba clan. Dr. Padmavati records the names of several smaller rulers with this name who are found in the inscriptions of the Chola country after the medieval Cholas came to power. Siriyar Kizhavan Kalappalan Tannichai, who ruled during the time of Rajaraja Chola I, Kalappalan Sellaiyan, a contemporary of Klothunga Chola I, Sitramur Udayan Perumal Karpahamana Kalappara who ruled during the time of Klothunga Chola II, besides another Kalappala ruler by the name Gangaikonda Solan Kalappalan. The terms Udayan and Kiran associated with their names show that they were wealthy landlords and hence must have been powerful chieftains. During the rule of Klothunga Chola I, there was a Kalabara Raja by the name Nirkundra Vanar, who is shown as a staunch Saivite, having composed a literary work called the Andadi on the Lord Shiva who presides over Tirupugalur, and he built a hospital known as Adula Salai that gave free treatment to the poor. We saw in an earlier episode of how the Buddhist monk Buddhadatta, who lived during the 5th century, composed the Vinaya Vinichayam from the Chola land and mentioned that an Achyuta Vikkantan was ruling over Kaveri Pumbattinam at that time. Interestingly, Saiva Siddhanta, the school of Tamil Saivite philosophy, has 14 canonical works that were all compiled during the 13th century and afterwards. The core treatise of this is the Sivajnana Bodham, composed by one Saivite philosopher, Meghandanar. This Meghandar's father was named Achyuta Kalappalar. So, some of the later Kalabara rulers may have embraced Saivism, while some of them may have embraced Vaishnavism. Why? Because Achyuta is later used as an epithet by the Alvars in their hymns to describe Lord Vishnu. Pachema Malaipolmeni Pavalavai Kamalachengan Achyuta Amararere go the lines. Kalappala Rayar was another variation of the same name, and the Thiruvidaimarudur inscription attests to rulers with that name who held important administrative posts in the courts of Rajaraja II and Klothunga Chola II. What is equally relevant and interesting to us is the fact that inscriptional evidence reveals the medieval Pandyas as well as the Pallavas were very equanimous in their outlook towards all faiths, true to Tamil spirit. Many Jaina inscriptions and rock-cut figurines of Tirthankaras around Madurai are accounted for from the period of Jadila Parantakan, whose rule began in 768 Common Era. The famed rock-cut Jaina caves and paintings of Chittanavasal near Pudukkottai came about in the 9th century and vouched for the continuing royal patronage. An inscription in Kalugumalai records a Devar Silai that was created by one Mani Shankaranarayanan, a Vedic Brahmin from Tiruchuriyal. The term Devar undoubtedly meant a Jain Tirthangara patronized by a wealthy Brahmin who obviously towed the line of the Pandya ruler. One can see relics of a flourishing Jaina tradition all around Madurai in places like Yanaimalai that are proof of the continuing Jaina influence for a long time after the fall of the Kalabras. This must only be on account of people continuing to follow Jainism and the king resorting to support the faith as a populist measure. Similar evidence of royal patronage is found in the inscriptions of the Pallavas of Tondai Nadu. While Kanjipuram was under their rule, Kadalur, which was then known as Padaliputra, was a very famous Jaina center. It was part of a territory called Banarashtra. Now, in the Periyapuranam, in the story of the Saivite Nayanmar Thirunavukarasar, alias Appar, he goes and lives for almost 2 decades in Padaliputra and masters Jain philosophy and is even awarded the title Dharumasenar. The Pallankoil copper plates issued by the Pallava king Simhavarma Pallavan, who ruled between 540 and 556 Common Era, records a Palli Chandam, a land grant made in favor of a Jaina institution at a place called Tirupati Kundram, headed by a Vajranandi. It talks of a Jaina spiritual center known as Sri Vardhamaneshwara Tirtham, wherein was found a Nandi Sangha headed by the learned Acharya Vajranandi. It records a village that was declared as a Shramanashramam for the congregation of Jinendirar and Jainendirar, monks who expounded Jaina philosophy. Now, Simhavishnu Pallava was the king who defeated the Kalabras and re-established Pallava rule in Tondai Nadu. Nevertheless, his mother donated fertile lands and gardens for the upkeep of a Yavaniha Changa, records the Hosagatta copper plate inscription, in order to accrue punya, that is good karma, for her husband's clan. Simhavishnu's son was the most illustrious and famous Mahendravarma Pallava of Mamallapuram fame. One of the rock cut temples he created was dedicated to Pidari Amman and stands as silent testimony to his heretic affiliation. During the reign of Nandivarma Pallava that followed in the 8th century, inscriptions talk of the creation of a Jaina rock cut temple at Tirupanmalai, where idols for Naganandi and a Ponni Akkiyar were carved. It was in Tamil land that we find women monks in the Jaina order. During his reign, a Jaina school of learning, a Palli with over 500 students, functioned at a place called Vedal. Land grants had been established for the running of this institution. There were many such places of learning that thrived during the Pallava rule. A continuation of the learning traditions of these heretic faiths that saw the creation of the great Nalanda University as early as in the 5th century, that taught not just Buddhist scriptures but also metaphysics, logic, grammar, mathematics, astronomy, medicine and fine arts. Through their centers of learning on Tamil soil, the Palli, these heretic faiths contributed to language and literature, art and architecture. We will look into the contribution of the Kalabras in these fields in the next episode. Vanakkam.